Most of you know Tom. He comes to the meetings religiously, always willing to talk. He has a remarkable career. B-17 pilot, 8th Air Force. He's very proud of that. He spent time in World War II. He also served in the Korean conflict and also in Vietnam. I've known Tom a long time, and he's one of my heroes. Tom, we're going to give you the floor to tell us about your experiences and pilot training in the United States.
Military training in World War II by me. I purchased that painting that you see up there. It was on the 8th Air Force Historical Society. It reminded me so much of a same February day, murky in Britain, that Gil Cohen, he's a big noted artist from World War II, painted it. I paid him. And then we got back and I mounted it in the entrance hall of Building 100 at the School of Aerospace Medicine, where everyone who came to me and my staff, I think that was a very big point of my credibility. Because when they went back in and talked to me, I always got, I think, the real historical problem with no embellishments. Because this credibility, I thought, is they probably figured, well, how can we be wrong here? This guy's one of us. And that really helped. Now, I was born, my dad is an immigrant from Italy, so was my mother. And I was born in the United States in this town that Bill also mentioned, Mon Essen. And it's there because of the steel mills. You see one of their blast furnaces right there on the left, smoking away. This town became about 20,000 people, great, had a great high school, gave me a great education. Nobody in Monessen was unemployed. There was about 15,000 people who worked in Pittsburgh Steel Company. I think it was the second biggest steel mill in America outside of U.S. Steel out of Gary, Indiana. There was a lot of smoke and soot, I'll have to agree with that, but the people lived with it and loved it. Well, there I am. I'm about 3 years old, little Tommy. I'm only speaking Italian, by the way. This is unusual. That's my dad. He's about 27. For immigrant, nothing. He's well dressed. He's got a nice vest, shoes, etc. My dad came over with a job as apprentice baker. His father, my grandfather, who I never saw, arranged with another friend of his from Florence, Italy, who had come to the United States in 1899. I remember the man's name, Vernaccini, and he started a bakery in Monessen, became rich because nobody else, and he was an immigrant, and nobody else had started, and he was baking Italian and French bread. And so my dad said, well, Marino, I'll send him over, and he was about 14, and he can learn the trade, and that's what he did. After that, my father was in World War I. I think he volunteered. He became a true American citizen. I've never seen anyone like him. After I was growing up, he had that Thomas McKee, American Legion hat everywhere on Memorial Day and 4th of July and all over the time. Anyway, thank you, Dad. I graduated from high school in 1940. I didn't know that the day I started my senior year, September the 1st, 1939 would be the most memorable day in all of my life. It was set, and I know that because I stayed in the Air Force my entire life. What happened on September the 1st when I entered my senior year in school? Hitler pushed a button and his Stuka bombers started World War II in Warsaw, Poland. And that's been all the rest of my life, has been World War II. Okay, I graduated in 1940. I didn't go to school. I didn't go to college. I don't know what I'm going to do. So I went to work in the mill, that same mill you saw, Pittsburgh Steel Company. Um, I worked in there for, well, actually a couple years. And then December the 1st came. It's now December 41. We're all going to church. My mother calls me and says, "You better come in, Tom. I want you to hear this." We had the radio on. I heard that there had been a bombing in Hawaii, and here we are, all was bombed and by the Japanese, and we're now in World War. We're pretty soon we're going to be in World War II. Soon thereafter, there's a draft, but for Roosevelt is signing it here, but it was for ages 21 to 45. So I'm only 18, so I say, well, that's not going to bother me. And so we went along on our life. I show that again because they're both of the mills. Over in the right-hand corner, you can't see it, is a house where Olga and I were born, a second story above a paint store. So there was all kind of odors coming up, except on Sunday when the paint store was closed. We finally we moved out of there and moved up on top of the hill. Time goes on, and pretty soon they very quickly, because we're now in the war, they lower the age to 18. Now I'm involved. I want to get in the aviation cadet program because I was doing a lot of model airplanes and model airplane flying, indoor stuff. I had some records and all that. But you had to, in order to get into flying back in World War II, you had to be a college graduate. Plus you had to have whatever IQ they wanted. Plus you had to be in good physical condition. And plus you had to have something that very few people in the whole country seemed to have. You had to have 20/20 vision uncorrected. You couldn't wear glasses. That's the way the Army had it set up. They didn't know they were getting into trouble. That was going to cause them lots of trouble because they were going to run out of eligible candidates that had all of that criteria. So finally, the aviation cadet program, they dropped the 2 years of college. Finally, they ran out of people for pilot training even then. So they decided between the School of Aviation Medicine and Johns Hopkins to give a college equivalent test. You take this test, the equivalent that you'd been to college. So the Army Air Force gave a written test in lieu of college. Only thing is you had to be a male. They weren't ready for females yet in the flying. And you had to be a high school graduate. They gave the test in all major cities in America. I went to the one, I said, I'm going to take this test because I want to get in the Air Corps. So the test was in the post office. It was 8 hours, 4 in the morning, 4 in the afternoon. And actually I finished a grueling test. They gave it, as I said, they gave it to any high school graduate male that could take it. After the test was done, everybody left. I stayed there. I was sitting there, and this soldier came by. Later I knew he was a master sergeant. I didn't know it then. He said, "Lad, what are you doing here?" I said, "Well, I'm waiting for my dad. We live 30 miles from here. He's going to drive me home." "Oh," he said, "what's your name?" So I told him my name, and he left. About 15 minutes later, he came back. He said, "You know, son, you did very well. We'll call you when we need you." Wow. So I told my dad and my mother all that. They were happy as a lark. They were going to have a big dinner. You couldn't have a big anything. You couldn't have a big anything then because everything was rationed. So I'll leave it at that. It's a story of its own. Let's go to the next. That's how I got in right off the bat. I wasn't anywhere. I just was in the Air Force Reserves. Oh, and I made it only because of my high school. They didn't have this kind of and this high school, all of them in 1940, I can say I would like to test it against anybody who gets a bachelor from almost any college today. And if we had kept it like this, United States, I had to have 4 years of language, 2 had to be Latin, had to have 4 years of English, 2 literature, 2 writing, grammar, composition, math. I went from math all the way from algebra to calculus in high school. Science, I had 4 years, all of that, boom, boom, boom. Civics, history, on and on. The only bad thing they did, and it didn't get me for 75 years, on the electives, all the males got shot drafting. That was pretty good. I did drafting work for the for blueprints, uh, but they didn't teach me typing. They only taught typing to girls. They took typing and they took home ec, sewing, all the good stuff that you need in life. And anyway, I wasn't too sorry about the typing for most of my career because I had 2 or 3 secretaries. So that's why I never learned this computer thing. Yeah, throughout the whole time I was at Brooks, I had 3 departments. I had a secretary in each department. I remember Bertha, she could type 100 words a minute and no mistake. So here's my last curriculum for my last year at high school. And you can see there's not a single, oh, I forgot about orchestra. I was first violinist for Miss Stainer. Oh, man. I wasn't quite good enough to, anyway, I played for her. Anyway, it's loaded with stuff like that. And I'm pretty sure if we'd keep that up, we wouldn't have too much trouble in America today. Oh, there's my high school class. Nice. There's 35 of us. I didn't realize there are only 7 girls in this class. There's Big M, Big John Mascus. He was all Pennsylvania tackle. I'm over here next to, right in front of the dark-haired girl who's in front of the other dark-haired girl. That's me, that's Margie DeSantis, and that's our valedictorian lady, and that's Bill Sakharov next to me. Bill Sakharov could speak fluent Russian. I was next to him. I could speak fluent Italian. One thing I learned after I went back for many receptions and reunions, the class of 1940 lost more of its male participants than any other class in the 100-year history of the Menneson High School. Amen. Anyway, I passed the test. I told you about that. I got a letter in January. You remember they said we're going to call you when we need you. I got a letter in January. It said you're going to basic training in Miami Beach, Florida. This is January 43. And I said, Miami Beach? I never heard of any Army training in Miami Beach. You know, I told you I also had geography. So I knew we weren't going to Miami when I got on the train when I went down, and they started going. The first town I saw was Columbus, Ohio. Next one was in St. Louis. Then I said, no, we're not going to Miami this way. Anyway, we finally ended up in Kansas City with the cattle. Eventually, we headed south. I remember going across the Okefenokee swamps in Georgia, and we finally ended up in Miami Beach. This is now January. It was snowing in Menneson. It's 72 degrees in Miami. And there were no barracks. So what we're going to do here? Well, they put me and most of the guys who came on that train in the Atlantic Towers. It's still there. When I made these slides, I told my secretary, look it up. And she found that slide. On the other side is the Roney Plaza. Apparently, Clark Gable was in the Roney Plaza, but we never saw him. So the OTS guys were over there in the bigger hotels. Now, Miami Beach didn't have any fences. You could go up the whole 20 miles on the beach. And so while we were there, that's mostly where we trained. And that's also where we ran. That was our PT. And the thing about the Atlantic Towers, everything in the military was by alphabet. So Allen, hey, they're general. Allen and Askowitz and Andrews, they were all on the first floor. Now, up on the 7th floor was Turner, Trubinsky, me, and Zubritsky. That was okay. It's the 7th floor, except they shut the elevators. Okay, so all we did is run up and down 7 flights while they asked us to do this, do that, do the other. And I never realized that going upstairs is the highest kind of PT you'd ever want to do. I found that out when I was an old man and I couldn't go up the steps anymore. It's harder than weightlifting. There were 2 bunk beds in each of those rooms, and there were 2 rooms connected to 1 bath. So there's 8 people and only 1 bath. This was a low-priced hotel, by the way. And those guys from Miami Beach that had these hotels were smart. They rented them to the government for this, and I'm sure they probably rebuilt them later, said that the Army boys wrecked the rooms or something of that nature. Anyway, so we finished, and then we're supposed to go to classification centers to be classified. Classification, this is all in World War II. Classification centers were filled, so the Army cooked up another deal, which they called it CTD, College Training Detachment. So they didn't have any place. They wanted to preserve us. They didn't want the draft to get all these prime candidates that they had rounded up for flying, as they were having trouble getting them. So this is the way they ran it. They had CTD, a College Training Detachment. They sent me and the rest of it. I went to Wittenberg in Springfield, Ohio. And so I just started studying. It was a first-year college. And we had meteorology and math and history and all that good stuff. Oh, yeah, well, we never did see Clark Gable, but they claimed he flew 3 combat missions. He was taken back and he went to Hollywood to make films. But they claim he did 3 missions as a gunner. We never did see him at Roney Plaza, though. Okay, so I went to Wittenberg College, and I did it's just like any college person. They're just biding our time. And I got my first flying there. There's the first flying in the old Piper. I don't want to show you my thing because I don't think I did very well. There's old Maine. Most of these colleges rebuilt the insides due to this CTD. I'm pretty sure because they said the Army boys destroyed those. Every place we went, we destroyed something. And somebody rebuilt it. Anyway, I did pretty good. I was getting ready to take my test. I had about 2 weeks to go, and I got orders. Now, what were the orders for? They were for classification centers. That's why they held us off. There was a classification center in Montgomery, Alabama. There was one in San Antonio, Texas, and one in Santa Ana, where they give you about 2 months of tests. The School of Aviation Medicine, and they cooked up all, well, I'll cut to them in a minute. So the others were filled. One opened up in Santa Ana. I'm over here in Ohio, and they send me to Santa Ana. So I clickety-clack on this railroad all across Indiana, and Illinois, Missouri, Kansas, all the way down into Texas, New Mexico, Arizona, all the way to Santa Ana, next to get to the classification center. Though at Santa Ana, I do more pencil and paper tests, more IQ tests, more psychophysical tests. Anyway, we went through this for about a month, and they claimed that if you got a rating of 7 to 9, you were 90% sure of finishing as a pilot. Now they did that so they would save money. That's what they said. And so I had to go along with it. There was a lot of PT, and we taught them swimming. And by the way, who is this person? Do you everybody know him?
And Joe.
Who?
Joe.
Anybody? Joe?
Joe
DiMaggio.
Yeah.
Yeah, he was my PT instructor. That's right. Well, but he didn't do much PT. He had a big leather jacket. He was a master sergeant. He walked around. He had some other guys helping to do the military training. But there he was there at Santa Ana. Anyway, I got classified at pilot training, and so I'm going to primary flight training. The classifications here were, you're either going to go to pilot training. If you didn't make that, you were going to go to bombardier. If you didn't make that, you could go to navigator, or you could go to gunner, or for one other, I can't recall. And they classified you in all of those things and split everybody off and send everybody on. And I went to Ryan Field, Tucson, Arizona. It was a civilian contract flying school. Ryan do anything else good?
Spirit of
Anybody
St.
want? Spirit of St. Louis, you're right.
Yeah.
Anyway, Ryan, I had this flying school, but they also built the Sportster, which you see on the left. That had an inverted Menesco engine, pants on the wheels. It was going to run it in the Cleveland air races. Forget about Oshkosh. You want to see something big, you ought to, who remembers here the Cleveland air races? That was the big time stuff in my area. And a Sportster was going to win for the Ryan around the pylons and all that good stuff. But the war came. No more Cleveland Air, just like now. So what did the Ryan guys are smart. They took the inverted engine out. They put in a 5-cylinder Kenner, put in a wooden prop, took off the pants on the wheels, met the bare wheels, restrung the wings with wire, and then they said, "Hey, Army Air Corps, we got a PT-22," and that's what I trained in, plain metal. Everybody else trained in a Stearman, a two-winged. The last of the Stearman was called a ground looper. Every time you landed, you ground looped. The landing gear were so close together. You go, really. Now, this was a good airplane. So I'm there. We get half-day ground school and a half-day flying. There I am. It's all alphabetical again. See, that's me in the middle, down below Mr. Busby. Mr. Busby was our instructor. He's too old to get in the military. He was about 50. He was a he flew a lot of barnstorming. And there's Stewart and Sweeney. And so, it's all alphabetical again. And he soloed all of us in the planes behind us, the PT-22s. Oh yeah, here we had a lot of acrobatics, snap rolls, slow rolls, spins, landing. This is a good airplane for that. You took one cross country. I went to Sells, the Indian reservation. There's my flight log, which somehow I saved. Got all the times that I went on it and where I was, and I made it back, and it was only about 900 miles. I got about 65, maybe 70 hours. But what's frightening was, even after all that stuff at the classification center, 1/3 of the class washed out. Whew. Oh, now we got some military flying. I went to basic at Minterfield, Bakersfield, California. That's in the San Joaquin Valley. Now we got a big airplane. It's much bigger. It's got a 9-cylinder Pratt & Whitney, about 400 horsepower. It's the BT-13 Vultee Valiant. We called it the vibrator. We called it the Vultee vibrator because that canopy would start shaking at certain things. Well, I'll show you. We learned a little bit about maintenance, the basic part. We had to start using aircraft ID. They were silhouettes, black silhouettes on cards, so we could identify our enemy. You're supposed to be able to identify all the both enemy and friendly airplanes. We started to go on instruments. We had to learn the Morse code. We always had meteorology and navigation constantly. It's pretty intense. Well, you all know it. You've all been in it. Now, but all the instructors now weren't civilians. They were military. We still got to do the stalls, loops, root spins, but this airplane was clumsy compared to the Sportster. Yeah, it did it, but not really. But we started doing instrument flying under the hood and in the Link Trainer. Now there's a simulator for you, the Link Trainer. It's a great simulator. I have pictures of it here. And it was you needed that if you're ever going to learn to fly. I took to that. I was a damn good instrument flyer because a Link Trainer didn't bother me. If you had any trouble, though, you got a check ride. If you got a check ride, you were in big troubles. Now, what I didn't like was night flying because I didn't have enough instruments, and I'd be turning to the east. And there's nothing but mountains to the east, so it's all black. It's all black, nothing but mountains. I don't have any instruments. I don't like it. until I turned all the lights of Los Angeles. Now I got a reference. It's much easier. Anyway, that was my thing on night flying. I was in the, now I'll skip the fluorescent cockpit lights. That was an experiment by the School of Aviation Medicine, which also bombed out. We were taught formation flying daytime, but the instructors didn't want to hear about it at night. They just said, if I see your lights, we're in formation. Okay. We had a big cross country here, about 300 miles. I got about 70 hours of total flying. Now here's the link trainer. There's the two links up there. When you shut that down, you're totally on instrument. Oh, by the way, Link developed this in 1926. Link made air he made organs.
Yeah, pipe organs.
For churches that were run by air, and the Link trainers all run by air underneath, and it can go into various configurations with little air pumps that move it around. So it simulated an airplane. Now, this guy, he ran your life. This is usually a master sergeant. He had a map, or he had a thing that you were running on his disc. It was a crab, and it crawled around and told you what you were doing up there was being recorded out here. Well, without this, we'd have never learned any instrument flying. Yeah, there's the Velti, there's the BT-13 in the background, and that shaky canopy. And I'm the one without the jacket. Okay, I'm hot-bodied. Wagner is to my left. He's the biggest man in the squadron. He's maybe about 6'2", 6'3". I don't think he could make it in high school basketball today. I'm next to him, and then there are three other individuals to my right. Also, I want to show you, in World War II, I was tall, if you could believe that. I was 5'10" and a half. These other people next to me, well, I always asked a question when I was lecturing the flight surgeons. What do you think was the height of a World War II soldier in the American service? Almost everyone got it wrong. It was 5'7¼ inches. And they're all to the left of me. Then there's me, and then there's Wagner. That's a side channel, but it's important in what's happened. Nobody today, with all of the food we have and all of the vitamins and all that other stuff, I think the American male average today is 5'9½". You wouldn't think that, though, by looking at TV. You'd think it was like 6'7". Okay, I made it to advanced flying. Next, look how many junctures we had to keep moving around. I'm on to advanced. Now at advanced, you're supposed to have a choice. You're going to go into single engine. There's AT-6 on the left, or bomber pilot training. Don't worry what you put down. You're going to go where the shortage is. Most everybody went into bomber. That's a UC-78 Cessna. We called it the bamboo bomber because it was made all of wood, well, except the engines and stuff. But it's made by Cessna and was used for training for all of us to go into bombers, B-24s, B-17s, B-25s, etc. Got their training out of this. This had two Jacobs engines of about 400 horsepower each. It was about a half size of a DC-3. The AT-6, well, there's a lot of AT-6s still around today. So they had about, I think, a 560 horsepower Wasp engine, and it had retractable gear. It had a Hamilton changing pitch prop. It had everything. We didn't have anything. I think we had boards, sticks. Yeah, it was called the bamboo bomber. Here it is. It's a UC-78. And like I already mentioned, one thing, some of you, well, nobody's as old as me, but my kids watched this airplane on a TV when it was Sky King. Sky King had this plane all made up as civilian something or other. I don't remember, but every Saturday morning they were watching Sky King. And anyway, this is what I learned to fly with two engines on. We also did a lot of instrument flying in this airplane, believe it or not, after we had our other things in the trainer. How did we fly instruments in this plane? Well, all the windows, the pilot tacked up, well, he put it up with plugs. There wasn't any Velcro then, so we just snapped it on. Green celluloid, large, if they covered the windows completely, celluloid, so it's an early type of plastic. Your co-pilot with you, and he looked out, and he just looked out through the green like he was looking through a pair of sunglasses. Now, the pilot had the green glass on all of the windshields that face forward, and then I would put on a pair of red goggles. Well, with the red goggles and the green, the windshield turned black. I couldn't see out. All I could see were the instruments, and they were all red. So I would do certain procedures all on instruments, and he would check me supposedly, and then would switch over, and that's how we did instruments while flying. It wasn't a bad idea either. Well, we also did a lot of pilotage. By this time, I was in Texas. Well, we also did, we tried to land with this radio range system that was there to locate yourself, where that sent out an A signal and an N signal, and you're supposed to S-ing into these quadrants until you picked up. Actually, it was worked out so that the A and the N would come together where you see the purple stripes, and it would be a continuous tone because the da, dit, joined the dit, da. So pretty soon it was da, dit, da, 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 pretty soon it was da. When it was all one tune, you were supposed to be on the beam. If you varied from that on one side or the other, you'd start picking up, and you're supposed to be S-ing your way in. And once you got close enough, if you saw the red light, which was at 50 feet altitude, go in for a landing. If you didn't see it, put on the power and go around. I never made a landing on this. This was way more than we had it, but I don't think it was very useful. Now, pilotage, though, was easy in Texas. We left Pecos, that's where I was based. And as soon as you lifted off, you could see all the state of Texas. It was always clear. And also, if you looked about 70 miles to the southwest, you'd see this gleaming structure. You couldn't lose it. It was the McDonald Observatory. It's still there, except back then there was only one dome, and they spray painted it silver. And you could, like I say, that could be your checkpoint. Put that on your map, and you can go anywhere in Texas after that. Anyway, on your slide, it says, picture taken 4/6/1939. That McDonald Observatory was actually built in 36. Mr. McDonald wasn't even a Texan. Mr. McDonald had a shoe factory in Minnesota, and he donated $300,000, which was a 10 million, to why? Well, he was an amateur astronomer. He donated that money to Texas because he said the clear skies to see out are going to be in Texas, and he was right. And this was this pilot. Okay, I graduated Army Air Force pilot May 23rd, 1944 from Pecos. They gave me $250. I bought a uniform in there. I got a 2-week leave, and I'm going to go back to Monessen. Well, Bill, how are we going to get back to Monessen from Pecos? Greyhound bus, but that's 2,000 miles. So most of my so-called vacation is in this Greyhound bus. I get back to Monessen, I see my folks. They love me. We had a good spaghetti and ravioli dinner, and pretty soon I got to get back on the bus again. I can't even stay. Why is that? Because I got to take the bus all the way back to Pecos, all the way back to Texas. Then I got to keep going west. Then I got to go back through New Mexico. Then I keep heading west. Then I keep going until I get to Yuma, Arizona. Wow. What's in Yuma, Arizona? Well, there's where the real flying starts. That's B-17 pilot and co-pilot training. I was going to start part 2 for the students that I was teaching to be flight surgeons, and I just put this on up. So I trained there for about 4 or 5 weeks on B-17s, whatever all we had to do. Yuma at that time of the thing is about, I'd say 122 in the daytime, and it drops all the way down to 90 at night. As a matter of fact, those UC-78s, you saw those bamboo bombers, they had them at Yuma. They had to take them away because the glue broke from that tremendous changes in thing. It expanded, contracted, so they got them all out, the UC-78. There weren't any more at Yuma, but the B-17 was a hardy, it could stand anything. So that's what I trained in. I did make it. I became a crew member with Harry Bocchino. He's with the black shirt. We're hamming it up and back during the war. I'm with the A2 jacket. I was his co-pilot. Thank God for Harry Bocchino. I probably wouldn't be here. Harry was the main instructor on B-17 training in Wendover, Utah. And then his number came up, so he had to go too. And when he came up, he was going to put up a lead crew, which he did. And somehow my number came up and I became his co-pilot. And then we went for more training, 6 weeks in El Paso. It's where we put our team together. Biggs, yeah, Biggs Air Force Base, right. Oh, God, I'm losing it. Yeah, I always remember one thing about Biggs Air Force Base. So we're taking off for night missions. We'd fly to the south and west, and we'd fly over El Paso. And the one thing I used to see, and it was getting dark, all the lights were lighting, all of the neon signs were coming up. And I could always remember this one big sign that I'd just fly over that said Hotel Paso del Norte. I knew I had it made. Once I was on top of it, then we made a nice turn, left, right turn, and on we went into New Mexico and Arizona to do our flying. Paso del Norte. Anyway, proved that I did do some training. Them on the My Mary Myrtle was a B-17 I used a lot because it was in the 751st Squadron. So that's where we returned from a mission. I have the parachute on. My Mary Myrtle wasn't my plane. It was plane in our squadron that I got to use a lot. That's John Self, the bombardier next to me in the front with our bags and stuff. Between July of 39 and August 45, Army Air Corps Training Command put out 193,500 pilots. About half failed. I figured this is my own saying. World War II is the most defining events in the history of our country, and definitely mine, because it was the rest of my life. Now, when I wrote this, I wrote something, in my opinion, it was also the moment in our history when we reached our zenith as a nation. Well, when I went to give this talk, I was still on duty. The general called me. He said, Tom, I really like your talk. It's great, but you cannot use those last 3 sentences. I said, yes, sir. I took them out. But I revised this talk 10 years later. I was right. And I put it back down. I still think we seized our zenith when the war ended.
Fantastic, Tom. That's all.
Anybody have a question? I'll try to answer. If it's gone too long,
Yeah.
relax. It's over.
Yeah. So you, just your final there, when you got your notice, how long did it take you to be checked out overseas once you got to fly combat missions? How much longer did it take from the US to start
One
flying?
day,
1 day?
right away. Oh, no, 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 no. No, we went there, let's see, I got there in before Christmas. They were down a couple days at Christmas, so we got to fly. The biggest part was trying to get yourself back in to Gallatin at night. They had all kind of hooded lights, which I never found. Neither did almost anybody else. And there was a set routine which we went on. It took about a week, and they checked everyone out because dangerous flying in the 8th Air Force from the moment you put the throttle forward. Sometimes the most dangerous flying that I got to was assembly. Assembly, I think, is what won World War II rather than the nuke. The 8th Air Force was the only unit in the military that went to war every single day for 4 years. I know the Marines were fighting, and that's not to deny anybody anything, but the 8th Air Force put up a fight every day from February of 42 until April or May of 1946. Now, some of the most dangerous times was assembly. We had 36 air bases, all within 75-mile diameter. Could you imagine? 1,000 airplanes in the dark. 1,000 airplanes took off at 30 seconds, and we go up and we got to join our 36 airplanes right up above us. We're circling, circling, circling. They're looking for us in the dark. They can't find us, so we're shooting flares. Pretty soon we've got red, red, green, 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 red. We don't know who the hell's looking for. I'll tell you, there were a lot of accidents, and if you had an accident with a full B-17 with 2,000 gallons of gas and 500-pound bombs, that's about almost as bad as a nuke. So that's all I can say on that. So,
Yeah.
yeah,
Fascinating.
a lot of the 8th Air Force, they said sometimes the environment is more deadly than the enemy.
Yeah.
Well, the environment was deadly. If you were up high and you stepped out and you had no oxygen, you died. If you stepped out and you were up that high, you froze, and on and on. I didn't know what I was getting into. That's all I can tell you.
Fantastic story, Tom.
I
Appreciate it,
didn't know what
and you sharing it with us. This is great.
Well, it did turn out, though. You know, everybody pray, and I'm all praise the Marines. I don't be running around on Okinawa and all those places they went. But when they totaled everything up, they lost more soldiers in the 8th Air Force than they did in the whole Marine Corps in the whole World War II. I didn't know that. If I'd have known that, man, I don't know what I'd have done, but I'm here. I'm happy about it. Every bit of it was fine. And if you do it again, well, for America, I would do it, but I'd be wondering about why.
My provost marshal isn't here, but I'm going to propose a toast to one of our greatest. So here's to Tom.
I have
Here,
one
Here,
too.
here.
Here, here.
Here, here.
Here, here.
Dr.
Agua pura. I hope.